Alhamdulillah. All right, so that being said, so today inshallah we're actually picking off, I know the title changed a little bit, so the flyer that was sent out, and it was purposely sent out that way, is we're talking about the description of Jannah. And that is true, but I have to say that we are closer to the end of a series we started, which is a journey to the hereafter, which is talking about the entire journey that we go through in details from the time of death all the way until we enter Jannah, inshallah. In between, what happens with the questioning in the grave, or the experience of death itself, the questioning from the angels in the grave, the experience of the grave itself, the trip of the soul that it takes, and then the day of judgment, prior to that, the signs, the major signs and the minor signs, and then the events of the Day of Judgment, and then us standing in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala being judged, the books, the scales, the people breaking up into different groups, and then entering the hellfire, entering Jannah. And we have finished all that, including the description of the hellfire, and we are at the last stage inshallah, which is description of the Jannah. Last time we left off, do you guys remember what we were talking about 3 months ago? We're talking about what? You took notes, alhamdulillah.
Yeah, I took notes.
Well,
names of the Jannah.
we were talking about the names of Jannah. Okay. Now before I dive into this, it was a normal habit of the Sahaba radiallahu anhum to ask a lot of questions about Jannah, to be inquisitive about Jannah. In fact, to tell the Prophet ﷺ, tell us about Jannah. Why?
Ultimate gift.
The ultimate gift. That is true, but I can argue there's a better gift than that, but it is an ultimate gift, it is true. No, I'm not asking what the ultimate gift is. I'm like, why were they asking about the description of Jannah? Why did they want to learn more about it?
To motivate them to...
Excellent. Motivation. All right, a source of motivation. This is our human nature. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had went into the details in describing the aspects of Jannah as a way of encouragement, as a way of motivation, so that we could strive harder. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala always linked His mercy and how much work we put in with the level of Jannah that we will be there and the types of pleasures are there. So that is good. Yes, motivation. Anything else? Huh?
What was the question?
The question is, why were the Sahaba quite often asking or Prophet ﷺ to describe the Jannah for them?
Because it's the goal and they are trying their best to work for it.
So you're combining motivation and our final abode, ultimate. Actually, you didn't say final abode. That's the ultimate. You said the ultimate gift.
To make everything easy for it, whatever the challenges and of life and the ibtila from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the hard test they are...
Okay, so knowing the reward that awaits you facilitates, makes it easier for you to overcome the hardships. That is true, because even in the worldly things that we face, quite often we are willing to endure, for example, long painful hours at work because we're waiting for the financial compensation. We think sometimes it's worth it. So that is true, right? Knowing that what waits us in the end, the pleasures and all these things, can be a way that allows us to be, or enables us to be a bit more patient, to endure some of the hardships that we face for the sake of attaining something that is more great. That is true. Anything else? I'm looking for something that is a bit deeper and a bit more important, by the way.
Working for it.
True, working for it.
To be with Prophet in Jannah?
No, I'm referring to why, what is some of the reasons why they were asking Prophet to describe Jannah for them. It's more of a spiritual aspect, okay? It's more of Iman. Now all this cannot be accomplished, all we're saying is the motivation, the enduring of the hardships, that can never be attained without that important component of spirituality and belief and Iman. Because that's the internal drive. The more conviction and certainty we have, the more it allows us to do this a bit easier. Okay, because the more we believe in the reward, and so the more details and information we have about Jannah, the clearer the picture it is, the more certain we have. So this is called ilm al-yaqeen, right? The knowledge of certainty. And so the Sahaba would desire that, and it's something that's important. There's a very important spiritual factor or aspect of this. It's beautiful how much sometimes when we talk about Jannah, when we come out of these sessions, quite often we want to do things to attain Jannah. And if you notice, it's more of a spiritual component. And this is really the ultimate, or I should say the essence of what we should be trying to capture from this. All this, of course, yes, they're important. But without that essence, all this will not be able to be sustained. We will not be able to sustain all these other things. Yes?
Yeah, so the Prophet
Sallallahu
he described, I was going to say that maybe he described Jannah because he wanted us to see how like insignificant the rewards of this life are compared to the afterlife.
That is true, to give us this, a perspective. And it also includes, yes, that this is our ultimate abode. We're heading to a destination. Quite often we want to know what this destination is like. So all these kind of encompass their true. Now last time we left off, we were talking about names of Jannah, and the reason we were mentioning the different names, and I should say their names and characteristics, because some of them are not real names per se, but more descriptions. So names and descriptions of Jannah. The reason we mention that is because when something is of importance, of value, quite often you would have an increased number of what we call it, or the names associated with it, or descriptions about it. And so when we talk about Jannah, it's not just one name. We call it Jannah, we call it Firdaus, we call it what else? Al-Ghurfa, that's true, the room. Dar al-Muqama, Jannat al-Ma'wa, Al-Husna, Jannatu Adn. So you find all these descriptions that describe Jannah for us for a specific reason. Once again, to increase the motivation, to give you a different aspect of its beauty, a different perspective of what is being, going to be there, inshallah. So today, inshallah, we're going to start with the first aspect. So we're going to start with the description of the things in Jannah in terms of we'll talk about, for example, the soil, the building blocks, maybe perhaps, the doors as you enter, all these things we're going to start with it. And obviously we're going to start from the outside towards the inside. And so the first thing we're going to talk about is the doors of the gates of Jannah. Now when we talk about the doors of the gates of Jannah, we had already talked about the doors of the hellfire. So how many doors are there in the hellfire? 7. How many doors are in Jannah? 8. More mercy. Okay? There's 8 doors in Jannah, 7 doors for the hellfire. Now there's guardians for the hellfire, so there's also guardians for the Jannah. So at the doors of Jannah there are guards, angels who guard it. Similar to how there are guards guarding the doors of the hellfire, there are angels guarding the gates of Jannah. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had mentioned this in Surah Al-Zumar when He was describing when the people of Jannah approach it. حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءُوهَا وَفُتِحَتْ أَبْوَابُهَا. Once the people who are people, inhabitants of Jannah come closer, and it's a beautiful description. Once they come close to it, حَتَّى إِذَا جَاءُوهَا, once they approach, come close to it, وَفُتِحَتْ أَبْوَابُهَا, and its doors are open. Not just that, but they also become, they're greeted. وَقَالَ لَهُمْ خَزَنَتُهَا, and the guardians of the Jannah, the gatekeepers, they will tell them, what are they going to tell them? سَلَامٌ عَلَيْكُمْ طِبْتُمْ فَادْخُلُوهَا خَالِدِينَ. Right? Peace be upon you. Right? Salam alaikum, tibtum, which means taba, which means purified or something that is good. Fadkhuluha khalidin, enter it, khalidin, which means you're going to be remaining there for eternity. Now khazana over here is the plural for khazin. Khazin is one which is the person who is trusted with guarding something. Well, I guess the keepers. And the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned interesting hadith, because we're talking about the 8 doors of Jannah. The Prophet ﷺ had mentioned quite often some descriptions about them. So for example, in Sahih Bukhari and Muslim, the Prophet ﷺ said, "Man anfaqa zawjayn fi sabilillah, da'ahu kull khazanat bab." So when the Prophet ﷺ said, whomever spends a pair for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, 2 identical things for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, then these guardians, so this we know that they're guardians, the khazana, also from the hadith, all the khazana would call them from each gate, and they will tell him, ay full, which means or person or individual, enter, halum, come closer. So they'd want him to enter from their gate. Now what is the name of the guardian or the chief guardian of Jannah? Ridwan, right? Yes, you all agree?
No.
What? You took it back. Why did you take it back?
Because this is plural and Ridwan is like one angel. So
No, I'm saying what's the chief?
yes,
I'm asking.
Ridwan, yes,
The chief is, his name is Ridwan. Now that is true. Many are sources in books of Aqeedah or books of talking about the journey hereafter. They do mention that his name is Ridwan. But to be honest, we don't have a single hadith that mentions his name. So Allah Alam where the source is from it. It might be from the Isra'iliyat, Allah Alam. But many of the Muslim scholars have the opinion that his name was Ridwan, and it comes from, or it's derived from Ar-Rida. Ar-Rida, which means being content, satisfied and content. All right, now to the doors of Jannah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as I mentioned, in the Quran, He had told us that there are the guardians waiting for it. And that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala had told us that there are 8 gates of Jannah. But He also subhanahu wa ta'ala gave us some of the names of those gates. So obviously the most famous one is called what? No, the names of the doors of Jannah.
of Jannah, Salah, Bab Salah.
There's no one, everybody knows this name, but not just Salah. Ar-Rayyan. We even sometimes name our kids that name, right? Ar-Rayyan. So Bab Ar-Rayyan. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Fil Jannah, ثمانية أبواب. In Jannah there are 8 gates. باب منها يسمى الريان. One of them is called Ar-Rayyan. Who is it for? لا يدخله إلا الصائمون. Good. Only the people who fast enter it. Now here's a question. Don't we all fast? Inshallah, hopefully, if we're bodily able and stuff like that, we all fast Ramadan. Is that right? So we're going to all enter from that door? No?
For those who fast,
Those who fast?
consistent.
طيب, alhamdulillah, we all fast consistently Ramadan.
Is it Ramadan on a weekly basis?
On a weekly basis. Voluntary fast. So we're talking about now more specific of not just the mandatory. Now the obligation, listen, the obligatory prayer, the obligatory acts of worship are for granted. This is the minimum. Everybody should be equal in this. Now these gates are more specific for people who are known for a specific act. It's a habit for them. So yes, this is more of the fasting that is voluntary fasting. They have the habit of fasting, whether it's 3 days of every month, or Mondays and Thursdays, or whatever, they can fasting every other day, but it's their habit to do a nafl, an extra act of worship of fasting. And this is the reward of it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would give you only a specific gate that only you with that act of worship as a reward for you to enter from it. And this is, to be honest, an honor that you be called from a specific door. فَإِذَا دَخَلُوا أُغْلَقْ فَلَمْ يُدْخَلْ غَيْرُهُم. If all these people of fasting enter, that door gets closed. That's it. So only those type of people enter from it. Now there's obviously other doors for those who pray, extra prayers, nawafil, and for those who give sadaqah, and those who fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. I don't know about that. It hasn't been named in a hadith, but some of the scholars, they looked at it, they say, hey, listen, those are the acts of worship, so maybe there's also a door for Hajj and Umrah and all these things. But the hadith doesn't strictly mention. And now the other hadith the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, because the question is, I know Abu Bakr as-Siddiq had mentioned this, and it comes from a hadith. The Prophet ﷺ, and I mentioned the beginning of it, the Prophet ﷺ said, whomever spends a pair for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, دُعِيَ مِنْ أَبْوَابِ الْجَنَّةِ. He will be called from the doors of Jannah. وَلِلْجَنَّةِ ثَمَانِيَةِ أَبْوَابٍ. And there are 8 gates to Jannah. فَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الصَّلَاةِ دُعِيَ مِنْ بَابِ الصَّلَاةِ. Who is from the people of acts of salah will be called from the gate of salah. And who's from the people of sadaqah, they're known to give sadaqah, they will be called from the gate of sadaqah. And whomever is from the jihad will be called from the gate of jihad. وَمَنْ كَانَ مِنْ أَهْلِ الصِّيَامِ دُعِيَ مِنْ بَابِ الصِّيَامِ. Whoever from the people of fasting will be called from the gate of fasting. And so Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, he said there is no harm for anybody to enter from any of these doors. Because in the end, what do we want to do? Enter Jannah. Right, so it won't harm us. Really, there's no, whatever door we enter from, it's beneficial. But then he asks him, فَهَلْ يُدْعَى مِنْهَا مِنْكُنْ مِنْهَا كُلَّهَا أَحَدَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ. Is there any person that will be called from all of them? Now you can think about the person who gets called from them. We're looking at this individual, obviously he prays not just a regular prayer, he prays extra prayers. He gives extra sadaqah. He fasts extra. He's striving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He has beautiful qualities. So all these qualities, they must be in him. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, yes. Right? And then he said, he said, وَأَرْجُ أَن تَكُونَ مِنْهُ, and I hope that you are from among them. And when the Prophet ﷺ says this, then it is true that the Abu Bakr Siddiq is from among them. Now, Abu Bakr Siddiq's question is regarding this, like a person who has accumulated all those beautiful characteristics. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reward him or her by allowing them or to be called from all these. So when you're approaching the gates of Jannah, these angels, each of those angels is calling you, no, please enter from this door. No, please enter from this one. No, from this one. No, come here, enter from this. This is how much they themselves are keen to meet you and have the favor of having you enter Jannah through their own gate. Sorry?
الكاظمين الغيظ والعافين عن الناس isn't one of the gates for Jannah doors?
I don't know. So once again, these are things of the unseen. Sometimes we can extrapolate, we can guess, but to firmly say something like that, I have no idea. But there is another hadith that by which somebody that he would do something that can be called from all 8 gates. Yes?
Can you please iterate the 8 gates of Jannah? One is fasting and then...
Okay, somebody else. Let's a quick review. How many did we mention?
8.
No, we said there's 8, but we only mentioned the name of few. Okay, what are they?
Rayyan,
Rayyan, which is for fasting.
Salah,
Salah. Sadaqah. Jihad.
Oh, you mentioned 4.
Yes, I only mentioned 4. We don't necessarily know the other 4.
I thought you said all.
So some know. So some of the scholars say, they extrapolate, they say, okay, Hajj, like, and a bunch of other stuff. Yes?
The hadith that you just mentioned, whoever spends a pair, what's meant here by pair?
2 houses.
So anything that's double?
Yes.
Okay. So
Anything.
Pair in money is...
So I'll spend $1 million here, and then I'll spend another $1 million there. Okay? So it's, like, you can pair that. So the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned another hadith by which if somebody does this, he can enter from any of the gates of the Jannah. So the Prophet ﷺ said, regarding the one who makes wudu, right? So he does wudu and he perfects the wudu, and then he elevates his sight to the sky, and he would say, "Ashhadu an la ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika lah wa ashhadu anna Muhammadan abduhu wa rasuluh." So he said, no, that's the end of the hadith. And so the Prophet ﷺ said, "Tuftah lahu abwab al-Jannah," that the gates of Jannah will be opened. All 8 will be opened. يَدْخُلُ مِنْ أَيُّهَا شَاءَ, which means if he died at that instant, he would enter from any of those gates that he desires. Now Imam Muslim rahimahullah and Imam Ahmed, they narrated from Abu Bakr al-Khattab, Umar ibn al-Khattab radiyallahu anhu. The Prophet ﷺ said, "Man tawadda fa ahsan wudu." Actually, this is the hadith, never mind. Now, there is a specific door, one of the 8, that is only specific for those who would enter without any reckoning. Okay? Remember we said there's the 70,000 on Day of Judgment, they would enter Jannah without any reckoning or hisab. So the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned that those group of individuals would enter from their own secluded door. And he said sallallahu alaihi wasallam that it is on the right side of Jannah, right? وَبَابِ الْجَنَّةِ الْأَيْمَنِ. Now the other gates, the 7 gates, people will have a share in them. Okay? So it's not just a specific categories, but other nations will share with them. So other nations will share in the 7, but from the Prophet ﷺ's ummah, those 70,000 and with them another 70,000, their reward, because of their high rank, they're going to enter from one of the specific door that is for them, and it's the right side of Jannah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would say, "Ya Muhammad," on the Day of Judgment. So this is in Sahih al-Bukhari and Muslim. Abu Hurairah anhu, he said, the Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would say, "Ya Muhammad, adkhil man la hisab alayhi." Like, adkhil, which means enter, or tell them to enter, the one who has no reckoning upon them, min ummatika, from your ummah, from the right gate. وَهُمْ شُرَكَاء النَّاسِ فِي الْأَبْوَابِ الْأُخَرِ. Now the remaining 7, your nation will share it with the other nations. So this also tells you, subhanAllah, the favor and blessings Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gave the ummah of the Prophet ﷺ, that their status, that a specific group will only be designated a specific door that they will enter because of what they have done. Now then the Prophet ﷺ had described also the wideness of the gates of Jannah. And so the Prophet ﷺ, he said, with whom my soul is in his hand, between the بين مصراعيه, which means between the two ends of the Jannah, ما بين مكة وهجر, is between Mecca and Hajar, أو كما بين مكة وبصرة, or between Mecca and Busra. So the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned two cities. Hajar is what is is more of the eastern part of the Arabian Peninsula. It's what is now currently Qatar and Bahrain. So if you measure from Mecca to Qatar and Bahrain, and the other one, Busra, is a bit north, in Sham, right? Sham, which is previously Syria, Jordan, all this area. Now, if you measure the distance between here to there or here to there, it's pretty much almost the same, and it's about almost like 1,273 kilometers, which I think should give you around 790 something miles. Okay, that is the wideness of the gate, like about almost 800 miles of distance between them. So how many people can go through it?
Billions.
Pretty much a lot, right? And they will all enter at once, by the way. Like they're all, because it will fit all that. So the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned the size or the wideness of it. In another narration, it gave the distance in terms of how many years of walking. So the Prophet ﷺ said, between the edges of the doors, ما بين مصراعيه في الجنة مسيرة 40 سنة, a walking distance of 40 years. That's another narration. Obviously, it will not take us 40 years to walk from here to Syria. So, how did the scholars interpret this?
So what's the question?
So one narration, that is a distance of about almost 800 miles. How long does it take you to walk 800 miles? I know, a lot. Would it take you 40 years? No. But this other hadith, it tells you between it, there's a distance walking of 40 years.
But isn't one like the distance, the gate itself, and one is the distance between the gates? I'm confused.
ما بين مصراعيه.
Okay.
مصر, you know the frame?
Okay.
Between one frame and the other end is a walking distance of 40 years. The other hadith, it tells you it's a walking distance of almost 800 miles. So is there a contradiction?
I mean, the years, are they measured in our years?
Yes, of course they're measured in our years.
No, I mean, because lots of the hadith think sometimes like in the Yawman and we don't.
No, that's different. That is different. Because the Prophet ﷺ said walking, right? So we're judging it by our walking distance.
That is above and beyond the time and the distance. It might means the.
You know, the problem is you guys are assuming all gates are the same size. No, you made that assumption. You're basing it on that assumption, right? Now we know that Jannah is different levels, right? We know that the doors then are different. So perhaps the higher you go up, the wider things become, the more spacious they become, right? Because it's more of a reward. And so some of the scholars says maybe perhaps that walking distance of 40 years, they call it لَعَلَّ هَذَا الْبَابَ الْأَعْظَمِ, the greatest of doors, right? Of the highest levels in Jannah, because the higher up you go, the wider things and more become. Okay? So this is what essentially it means, because remember that Jannah are levels. Yes, some hadith tell you that there is 100 levels, but the hadith interesting says أُعِدَّ لِلْمُجَاهِدِينَ, right? For the people who fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And between the level and the other one is similar to how you see the distant star away when it kind of fades. So this is just 100 level for the people who fight for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There's other levels maybe perhaps. And so they differ on how many levels they are. So it just tells you what awaits us. All right, now since we talked about the level of Jannah, we're going to go into talk about it now. Now we obviously know that because there are different levels, which means that people are going to be differing in rewards. And this is obviously from the Quran itself. So for example, when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَمَنْ يَأْتِهِ مُؤْمِنًا قَدْ عَمِلَ الصَّالِحَاتِ فَأُولَئِكَ لَهُمْ الدرجات العلا. So those who come to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in belief and they have performed good deeds, then for them they have the highest of ranks. الدرجات العلا. So if you have highest, then you also must have, come on guys, if you have a highest, then obviously logically you must have a lowest, right? This does different rankings. We're deducing over here from the Quran, okay? Now don't do this at home by yourself. But we're doing it together, inshallah. All right, so this is one aspect, but also from another the hadith of the Prophet ﷺ, when he talked about the different levels from Sahih al-Bukhari al-Muslim, Abu Sa'id al-Khudri radiyallahu anhu, he said, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, he said, "Inna ahl al-Jannah yatara'una ahl al-ghuraf." That the people of Jannah, yatara'una, which means they view the people of their rooms above them, kama yatara'una al-kawkab ad-durri al-ghabir, similar to how they see the star that is that's setting out, right, or that's coming out. So how far it is, like, because we see when you look at stars, they're very small, they're tiny because of their distance. So this is how they view them. في الأفق من المشرق والمغرب. So when they're out in the distance from either the rise or the setting. للتفاضل بينهم, because of the variation, the tafadul between variation of increasing variation between them. And so they asked the Prophet ﷺ, they asked him, like, are these, like, these you're talking about, the ones up high there, are the, like, the position or the status of the prophets, that no one would achieve them? And so the Prophet ﷺ said, Bala, right? So they're saying, like, these are for the prophets, nobody will attain them. So the Prophet ﷺ said, Bala, he said, like, yes, وَالَّذِي نَفْسِ بِيَدِهِ, from whom my soul is in my hand, رِجَالٌ آمَنُوا بِاللَّهِ وَصَدَقُوا الْمُرْسَلِينَ, people that have believed in Allah and believed in the prophets. So he's saying that these actually far ranks are not for the prophets, but they're for actually regular people, other people. And Muslim Imam Ahmed, the Prophet ﷺ said that the people of the highest of ranks, the people below them see them, how you see the rising star in the night, when it nights. وَإِنَّ أَبَا بَكْرَ وَعُمَرْ مِنْهُمْ, right? And Abu Bakr and Umar are from those people of the higher ranks. And so Imam al-Qurtubi, he mentioned this. I'm gonna quote what he said. He said, know that these rooms are different in elevation, in ascending, and in description based on the differences between its inhabitants. فَبَعْضُهَا أَعْلَى مِنْ بَعْضٍ, so some are higher than others. And really this is from the fairness of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, because in the end there are people who are more obedient to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. There are people who exert more for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala than others, and it is not justice that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would reward those who do more effort than similar to those who do less than them. Right? So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will reward those with different rankings. So similar, obviously, when it comes to different rankings, obviously there's more favors and bounties and pleasures and better experiences. And this is why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, for example, he said, وَلِمَنْ خَافَ مَقَامَ رَبِّهِ جَنَّتَانِ, whomever fears the position or state or standing in front of his Lord, then he'll have jannatan. And then when he described the lower status, he says, وَمِن دُونِهِمَا jannatan, and less than them there are two jannahs. So it's less in what? Less in everything, less in pleasure, less in, like, perhaps the bounties that you're seeing and all these things. So the more you do, the more the reward is, because once again this is from the justice of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So this is from all the verses that we can take, that there are different ranks. Now that being said, the Musa alayhi salam, the Prophet Musa alayhi salam, obviously he knew that there were different ranks. So in a hadith, he actually asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala about who is it, those in the higher and those who are in the lower ranks. And this is a very normal, common question, we'd want to desire. What are the description of those that would enter it? We'd want to ask that because we want to be like them. That's the purpose of it. And then who's in the bottom, so we can know, what is it, the least type of pleasure. And so the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned, this is Sahih Muslim, he said that Musa alayhi salam, he asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what is the lowest ranks of Jannah? مَا أَدْنَى أَهْلِ الْجَنَّةِ مَنْزِلًا, what is the state of the person who is in the lowest level of Jannah? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he said, it is a man, رَجُلْ يَجِيءُ بَعْدَمَا أُدْخِلَ أَهْلُ الْجَنَّةِ الْجَنَّةِ. And we talked about this before. He said, a person who comes after the people of Jannah had entered Jannah, فَيُقَالُ لَهُ, it will be told him, enter Jannah. And so he will say, oh my Lord, how? And the people, the inhabitants of Jannah, each one took his house or their abode. وَأَخَذُوا أَخَذَاتِهِمْ, which means that they took their paths and roads and means to seek it, and they already got it. And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He says, will tell him, أَتَرْضَى, would you be pleased that you will be given the likeness of a king from the kings of the earth. So think of the most, richest of kings, and you will tell him, would you want to have something like that? And so he would say, obviously, yes, right? Would you guys want that? No? طيب. Let me rephrase this. Do you want what the kings have in Jannah?
But there's a lot of worries.
Yes or no?
Yes.
No more worries though.
Yes.
No what?
Because whatever we get, we'll be worrying about that.
I know, but in Jannah there's no that worry, right? So kings in this world, how many palaces do they have?
A lot.
A lot of palaces. Would you want a lot of palaces?
Yes.
Would you want 4 or 5? Good. Do you want servants?
Yes.
Do you want any food you want anytime?
Yes.
Oh, only the sisters are saying yes. What's wrong with you brothers? Is it because the sisters want it? You don't want it anymore?
You want more.
Huh?
You want more.
You want more. طيب, greediness is good. But at least, would you be satisfied with that at least? Yes. So obviously the person said, radit, I'll be pleased. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He would say you'd have that, and the likeness of it, and the likeness of it, and the likeness of it, and He will say it 5 times, and He will say, of course, out of excitement, I'm pleased. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will say you'll have 10 times as much. And so this is, and you'll have mashtahat and nafsuk, whatever your self desires, waladhat aynuk, and whatever pleases your eyes, soothes your eyes. And so He will say, obviously, my Lord, I am pleased. So this is the lowest of the levels. That's the lowest of pleasures. And you can see how much there is in that lowest of level. So what is the highest? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so when He asked, when Musa asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what about the highest? Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not give him a description. He didn't. He said, فَأُولَئِكَ الَّذِينَ أَرَدْتُ. He said, this is for the people that I have chosen. There's a reason Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did not describe it. We don't know the complete description, because this leaves it out to our imagination. But also you can imagine when Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the most generous, rewards, what is the limit of it? Right? So He says, this is for the people I have chosen. غَرَسْتُ كَرَامَتِهِمْ بِيَدِي وَخَتَمْتُ عَلَيْهَا. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, I by my hand, I have planted for them karamatum. Karamatum over here is referring to generosity, right? What is going to be given to them. Right, so I have planted with my hands for them what they're going to be receiving from the bounties and the nobility and the pleasures and the generosity they're going to be receiving. And I sealed upon it, فَلَمْ تَرَ عَيْنٍ, an eye has not seen, or an ear has heard, or even crossed the thought or the heart of a human being. Recite if you will, فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ مَا أُخْفِيَتْ لَهُم مِّن قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ. Right? The فَلَا تَعْلَمُ نَفْسٌ, a soul does not know what has been hidden for it from قُرَّةِ أَعْيُنٍ, what pleases its eyes, a soothness of the eyes. That is the highest of rank. You can only imagine what is there. So Allah gave us what is the lowest, but what is the highest then? If this is the lowest, what can you imagine the highest? So this is the highest of levels. Now, the highest position in the highest level of Jannah is called what?
مقام المحمود.
No.
وسيلة.
No, that's al-wasila. Thank you. It's called once again, what's it called? Al-wasila. Okay, the highest position in the highest level of Jannah is called what? Again, what's it called? We asked Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give the Prophet this after every adhan, right? Allahumma rabba hadhihi da'wat tamma wa salat qama ati Muhammadan al-wasilata wal-fadila. And the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam told us this, right? So al-wasila is that position that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala gives whomever we gives, and it's for the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Only one man can attain this position, and it's the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. And we know this, many of the scholars mentioned this. So it's the highest position in Jannah. But even the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam had said, talking about the wasila, because the companions asked him, what is the wasila? And so he said, أعلى درجة في الجنة, it's the highest position in Jannah. لا ينالها إلا رجل واحد, only one man can attain it. وأرجو أن أكون هو, and I hope that I am that person. And so the Prophet ﷺ, said that this is in another narration, that is a position or status. عند Allah, right, in this eyesight of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, or with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, that there's nothing above it. ليس فوقها درجة فسألوا الله أن يؤتينا الوسيلة. So ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to give me al-wasila. Another hadith, when he says ask Allah to give me al-wasila, he says whoever does that, نال شفاعتي, right, that he will get my intercession. And so that's the highest level. So this is I'm taking a bit of information over here. All right, now who are those who can attain ad-darajat al-ula? We said the highest of ranks. So who are those that can attain the highest of ranks? The Prophet ﷺ had mentioned the description of some of those. And really, if you want to think about it, it does require a lot of work. So some of those people who would attain, now the Prophet ﷺ is just mentioning some of them. They're not the only type, but some of them. The Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, he said, الساعي على الأرملة والمسكين كالمجاهد في سبيل الله وأحسبه قال وكالقائم لا يفطر وكالصائم لا يفطر. So the Prophet ﷺ said, he said, as-sa'i, which means who's seeking for the needs, who's seeking, going out in the path for providing for the needs of al-armala, the widowed, wal-miskin, and the one who is in need, impoverished, is like the person who is striving for the sake of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the narrator says, I think he also said, and similar to the one who continuously stands up at 9 and prays and does not give up, and like the one who fasts all the time and does not break his fast. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, Kafir al-yatim. We know this famous hadith, right? The Prophet ﷺ said that the person who provides for the orphan, me and him are like that. And we know the Prophet ﷺ, where is he? He's in the highest ranks. And so this person is close to the Prophet ﷺ in the highest of ranks. Now, one can actually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can place a person in a rank and then he gets elevated. You're asking about that, huh? You're wondering. Yes, we could be elevated in ranks. And one of the ways this can happen is, so I'm going to mention the hadith. The Prophet ﷺ said that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would elevate the status or the ranks of a servant who's pious in Jannah, and then he will say, oh Allah, where did this come from? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala would tell him, بِاسْتِغْفَارِ وَلَدِكَ لَكَ, right? That your son, your child, waladik, which means child, it can be a son or daughter, your child, by your child asking forgiveness for you. And this is why it's very important for us to take care of our children, to raise them as best as we can, so that we be pious children, and so that even after our death in Jannah, continue to reap the rewards. But it also tells us that how we should treat our parents after their death, we should always ask for their forgiveness, so that they will be elevated in ranks. Now the beautiful thing is that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, part of enjoying the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, I'm going to mention this later on, part of enjoying the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is not to enjoying it by yourself, but to enjoy it with our family. But for granted, families, different members of families will be in different ranks. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, what will He do? He'll bring those members of the families together, to the lowest or the higher? To the higher one. Okay? And this is from the bounties of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All right, now we're going to talk about, I think I'm going to end with this, the soil of Jannah. Because remember we said we're going to talk about the surroundings, and then we're going to move into the palaces and all these things. But what about the soil, turba? What's it made out of? Dust, right? Sand and dirt and... No? Why not?
Rivers and water.
No, the soil is not made out of rivers and waters. There's rivers there, but...
Sand, right?
Okay, sand. Just regular sand?
Yes.
Yes? Not fine, very fine, high quality sand.
From the hadith of Prophet Ibrahim alayhi salam,
Okay. Okay. So translate. So you just kind of rushed through it. Translate. What does qi'an mean? All right, what does iqyan mean? You said iqyan, I think, right? Yeah. All right. Come on, guys. Right, so there's several descriptions. So the Prophet ﷺ, he said in the hadith, and this is in Sahih Bukhari Muslim, he said, "Udkhiltu al-Jannah, I was entered into Jannah, فَإِذَا فِيهَا جَنَابِذْ اللُّؤْلُؤ." Right, in it there's the janabidh. Janabidh is domes, like domes, right? Qubba, can be domes, اللؤلؤ of pearl. وَإِذَا تُرَابُهَا الْمِسْكِ, and its soil, turab, its sand, its soil, is musk. That's one description. Because we're talking about Jannah now, you just don't want any regular sand, right? We remember in Jannah everything is much better than we have in this world. So he described it as its musk. In another hadith, the Prophet ﷺ said, describing the soil of the Jannah, he said, "Hiya darmaka bayda." Right? He said it is darmaka, that is white. So what does darmaka mean? So darmaka is referring to the whiteness of a very good quality wheat. Okay? And wheat is not exactly white per se. What is it? I'm talking about natural wheat, none of this kind of bleached wheat that we see. So natural wheat is what?
Golden.
A bit kind of golden, right? So he said, "Hiya darmaka bayda," right? So the whiteness of the, like, the almost, I wouldn't say off-white, but kind of yellowish kind of type of deal, right? So that's another description. In another hadith, the companions were asking, "Wama bina'ul jannah?" What's it composed of? Like, what's it built from? So the Prophet ﷺ said, "Labina min dhahab wa labina min fidda," right? A brick of gold and a brick of silver. وَمَلَاطُهَا الْمِسْكِ الْأَذْفَرِ, right? And malatuha, malat is the mud you put between bricks to kind of make them stick. When you have bricks and you put them above each other, like, or close to each other, there's gaps, right? So you want to close those gaps. What do they close them with? Long time ago?
Mortar?
What do they close them with? Well, now they close them with cement. Long time ago. Good, mud. So al-malat is mud. And so he said, وَمَلَاطُهَا, right? Al-misk al-adfar. Al-adfar, which means pure musk. Right? So now we're talking about sand, we're talking about mud. وَحَصْبَاؤُهَا الدُّرْ وَالْيَقُوتِ. Al-hasba, which is referring to its pebbles, is made out of pearls and rubies. وَتُرَابُهَا الزَّعْفَرَانِ. And its sand, its soil, is made out of saffron. Okay?
So you can say وحصاؤها الدر.
حصباؤها الدر والياقوت.
What is the translation of yaqut, you said?
Al-yaqut, which is ruby. Okay. So to be honest, yaqut is a specific kind of mineral. Ruby is type of that, a class of that. Okay?
Can you retranslate the whole phrase?
وَحَصْبَاؤُهَا الدُّرْ وَالْيَقُوتِ. Al-hasba, which means referring to the small, like, pebbles in the ground. They're made out of pearls and rubies. Okay? وَتُرَابُهَا, which is the purpose of talking about the sand, the soil over here, it's made out of saffron. Alright, so from these descriptions, we see that the sand or the soil is made out of three things. Or there's three different narrations, right? So there's three things. Once it said that it's made out of saffron, once it said it's made out of musk, and what it's made out of durmuk, right? And we said durmuk is golden, or like the color of the very pure wheat. Okay? So which one is it then?
Depends on the daraja.
Okay, depending on the rank, all of them. Okay? So it's true, that could be the case. So some of the scholars said that.
Even the first.
Obviously, even though, now this is a description. Now, Imam Ibn Qayyim in Hadi al-Arwah, Hadi al-Arwah is a beautiful book that is all about description of Jannah. And he goes into details about all these things. So I took this, like, this is from his book. He said there is no contradiction, لا تعارض بينهما, right? Because then you can reconcile all of them. And he said, he talks about different ways you can reconcile this. He said a group from the pious predecessors, they said that the dust, right, the sand or the soil of Jannah is composed of both, right, musk and saffron. Okay, and saffron, what's the color of saffron? Yellowish, which is very close to the golden wheat, right? So he said there's no contradiction. And then he said also that it also can have two other interpretations or two other meanings. One of them is that the sand, which is the dry sand, is from za'faran, okay? if combined with water to create mud, it becomes musk. All right? Because mud is sometimes called sand, sometimes because it's from its origin. And refer, like, that's why the Prophet said, "Malatuha misk," malatuha, which means the mud that is being used to seal those gaps is from misk. And malat is talking about the mud, teen. And in some narrations, turabuha za'faran wa tinuha al-misk. Right? In other narrations, it's sand. Its soil is from saffron, and its mud is from musk. And so he said, when its soil is pure and its water is pure, and you combine this with this in the hereafter, then it will become something else that is more beautiful. And so that's why he said fasara miskan. Now the other meaning you can take is that the saffron is pertaining its color, not actually like the spice saffron, but rather the color. باعتبار لونه ومسكن باعتبار رائحة, and musk pertaining its smell. And so this essentially is the best of the qualities, right? From terms of the eyes, like looking at things, quite it's a very calming color, and then the fragrance. So he's saying this is just descriptions of difference. So this is different ways of combining. So really, there's no contradiction. It's not this or that, but you can combine all of them. So this has to do with the soil. Now the next thing we're obviously going to talk about is now the rivers. Okay, but I don't think we have enough time to talk about rivers, because we need to take a couple of minutes break before we start next session. So I think we'll stop here, inshallah. Next session we're going to talk about rivers, and then we're going to go from there on, inshallah. All right, jazakumullah khair, subhanakallah wa bihamdik, ashhadu an la ilaha illa anta, astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik.